Hey folks, welcome back to Real Estate Investing Unmasked. Today we're going to answer a question by another viewer talking about buying a property and living in it for 2 years versus just buying a rental property, an investment property. Let's answer that. So the question that was posed to me was, do you really save that much by buying a property to live in for 2 years and then turning it into a rental versus living in your own separate house and buying a property strictly for investment? The question came from a viewer it came from somebody who has been living in properties, buying property, living in it for 2 years and then turning it into a rental. And I'm not sure that he understood why he was doing it, why he was buying it for 2 years. Now, a lot of gurus will tell you that if you can live in a property for 2 years and then rent it out, that's great. But I'm not sure the message always comes across. And so the reason why the magical 2-year number is there is because in the tax code, at least for now, it says that if you have lived in a property as your primary residence for 2 out of the last 5 years, then when you sell it, you get the property tax-free up to a certain amount. Now, the tax-free, if you're single, it's up to $250,000. If you're married, filing jointly, it's up to $500,000. So that's a lot of tax-free money. And honestly, this plays into a lot of investors' methods. For instance, for me, I have seen this as a huge opportunity. If you buy a property and you rent it out, and then when you sell it, you do a 1031 exchange into a larger property and you fix it up, and then you sell it and you 1031 it into another property. Eventually, you can get a very nice, very large property, very expensive property, and you can have a lot of equity in that property. If, however, after all this time, you just sell the property, you're going to pay capital gains. However, if you move in after having rented it out for a year or two, because when you 1031, it has to be like a like exchange, so rental property. If you move in, though, after renting it out for 1 or 2 years, showing that your intent was to have it as rental property, and then you live there for up to 2 years, at least 2 years, and then sell it, then you get all that money tax-free, up to the $250,000 or $500,000. So that is a huge thing that investors use to their benefit. So the question, going back to the question, what's better, buying a property and living in it while I buy a rental property on the side, or buying a rental property that I live in first and then rent it out? The question really is, how do you want to get your money out of the property? If you're going to buy the property and hold on to it for long term, it really doesn't matter. The only difference is the loan. If you're going to buy the property with an owner-occupied loan, typically, from my experience, you get a 1 to 2% drop in interest rates if you're buying the property as an owner-occupier. So instead of getting a 3 or 4% loan as somebody who's occupying the property, you get investment property. Usually it's a 5 or 6% loan. It's much higher, or you have to pay more points, or you have to have more down payment. For instance, if I buy a property and it's going to be owner-occupied, it's probably a 3.5% down for an FHA financing on the minimum. If I'm buying a rental property, they're probably going to want 20% down. So that's the difference. And you don't want to lie and say that you're buying a property for an owner-occupy when you're never going to occupy the place, if you're just going to rent it out, because that's called fraud. And you can be put in prison for that. So don't be dishonest. But when you can buy a property, have the intent to live in it for a year or two. At least 1 year is typically enough to prove intent that you did intend to live there. And once you've lived there for 1 year, you could do the 2 of the last 5 years can also be you live in it for 1 year, you move out, you rent it out for 3 years, and then the 4th to 5th year, you move in it again. And then at the end of that 5th year, you sell it, because now you've lived in it 2 out of the last 5 years. So the benefits of buying a house that you live in first before you rent it is cash back when you sell it, a lower interest rate, and an easier loan process. Other than that, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another. And there may be some things that I'm leaving out that I'm not thinking of at the moment, but if you have something and you say, hey, Bob, you totally forgot this, put it in the comments down below. If you have a question for me, please send it to me. You can either send it to me privately through www.watchbob on youtube.com, or you can put it in the comments down below and I'll comment on it there. I'm usually pretty good about commenting on almost everybody's comments, at least for now. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and I'll catch you next time.